Hi all. Okay, previously we have saw the state transition diagram. Okay, for transactions. So whatever we saw it, these all things are required for recovery management. Okay, so what is this recovery manager? Okay, so what all things he will keep the track. Okay, those will see it. Okay, so whatever we saw with respect to this one only. So recovery manager will keep track. Okay, so what is that is begin transaction. Okay, so recovery manager will be there. So when transaction is started, what all operations are did. Okay, when this ended. Okay, then is it committed or is it aborted? Okay, so those all things it will do it, and some recovery techniques. Okay, so these things are there. Okay, so first is begin transaction. So whenever transaction started here, begin transaction state whatever you had, so it has to make a note of that. Okay, so its transaction is started. Okay, so then whatever operations, it may be read or write, whatever we perform. Okay, so those operations on the database, for that also you have to keep the track. So record manager will keep track of that one. Then end of transaction. Okay, so end underscore transaction, this will also be noted. So this is the thing what we are making sure that at the point it may be necessary to check whether the changes introduced by the transaction, so whatever transaction is did, those changes can be permanently applied for a database or not. Okay, so whenever we say as an end of transaction, so whatever operations we perform in between, that is begin to end, in between whatever we perform, those permanently we have to do it to the database or not, it will check it. Okay, so that's why we had here as something as a partially committed. Okay, so last time. Okay, so those it will check it. So depending on that, it will check. Then it will take a call. It has to aborted or it has to completely successful. It has to committed. Okay. Then one more thing will be there as and here commit underscore transaction, there's nothing but here so successfully whatever we perform of task. Okay, so these following the serializability also. Okay, so we don't have any kind of problems, so this transaction will get committed. Okay, so whatever task will do permanently, it will be, do the changes in your database, and it will not be undone later. Okay, so we will not undone later. Okay, then rollback or abort. Okay, so something but so here what we are doing is transaction is not successfully done. Okay, so end of transaction is unsuccessful, so the changes or effect that transaction may have applied on the database must be undone. Okay, so maybe in between somewhere here you came to know that whatever you done it's wrong or something about condition came. Okay, or after end of transaction maybe serializability is not there, so that time you have to abort it. So whatever things you done change on done on the database, those all things you have to roll back it. So here, how recovery techniques will be worked. Okay, so that's nothing but this is a recovery manager. It will keep track of these things. Okay, now for a recovery purpose, we have two techniques. That is nothing but undo. So whatever things we did it, that is undo operation will perform, and redo operation also. So why we require redo is so maybe some transactions. Okay, those are committed one. Okay, so it's committed. So and because of some other transaction failed, so what we did is that committed transactions also we did the undo kind of things. Okay, maybe. Okay, so before writing permanently to the database, we will do the undo kind of things. So those all things we have to redo it. So those operations we will redo it. So all the operations done by the committed transaction, those successfully we will redo it. Okay. So along with this one, system normally will manage the system log. Okay, so the database management system, whatever we have, this will manage the system log. Okay, normally we could say as a log or journal. Okay, so what all things will be there in this one, we'll say it. Okay, so here this log, why we are maintaining first thing is the log keeps tracks of all the transactions operations that affect the value of the database. Okay, so it will keep all the values, all the transactions, all the operations whatever we performed by the transaction on the database, it will keep the track. Okay, so whatever updation is done on the application, those things it will not keep the track. So on the database what all things is happening, those things it will keep the track. Okay, so So this is information is needed to permit the recovery. Okay, so why you require this log is whenever you want to do the recovery thing, so that time it will this log will be read. Okay, so then it will do the particular operation. Okay, so whenever transaction will be failed, those things will be taken care of. Okay, then log periodically is backed up. Okay, in a tape. Okay, so archived storage, or we will say as a tape, to guard against the catastrophic failure. Okay, so so where we will maintain this log is nothing but, so already we saw some kind of errors. Okay, so that time we will do the recovery. Okay, so these errors should not affect the actual our. Okay, so these things, so system failure. Okay, other than that, there is a divided by zero. Okay, so local error, concurrency. So these all type of errors should not happen the log. Okay, so only it may happen as a catastrophic error. There is a physically something problem is happening. Other than that, remaining five errors whatever we had, those should not affect the our log file. So but this can affect it. So to overcome this problem also, this problem also, so what we'll do is periodically we'll keep the update. Okay, so in tape file. Okay, so there's nothing but in tape is or nothing but you are storing as a some storage. Okay, there is nothing but after some point of time we'll write that one and you will keep it separately. Okay, so catastrophic error also you can avoid it by using this one. Okay, so what all log contains? Okay, that's log file, what all things it contains. So normally we will be having one transaction id, then whatever operations are happening, those things will be noted down. Okay, so transaction id, here we are referring as a, this in general syntax, t. Okay, t is nothing but you will be having some id number, will be having it for a transaction. Okay, so what log record contains is here start transaction comma then id will be there. Okay, it's nothing but here you are saying as a transaction started comma then particular which transaction started, that transaction id will be there. Okay, then write items, so whichever item you are performing, so that item. Okay, so which transaction you are writing that item. Okay, so which item you are writing it, so transaction t writing the x item, so this is the right item we are seeing it. So, okay, so this will be there. So old value of x and new value of x, so whatever value is there, that will write it. Then this transaction whatever it will modify for this x item, that will write it. Okay, so you are saying as a here write item. Okay, so these things will be recorded. And same thing, read item, so which transaction, which data type it's reading it, so those things will write it. Then in that transaction is committed or not, and so for that purpose commit, if it is committed, commit comma t, the transaction is successfully committed. Okay, then abort, so if it is aborted we will say as a abort comma t. So these all things will be there in your log. Okay, so whenever you are performing your transactions parallelly, so these all things will be recorded in your log record. Okay, systems log record, these all things will be recorded. Okay, and so here one more thing is, so we saw here we have the old value and new value also. Okay, so depending on the which protocol you will use for the recovery purposes, so sometimes you may not require new values. Okay, so because you have to recover means you require the old values, new values you may not require. There is a calculation per whatever you did it, those we may not require it. So those things can be avoided. Now, so how recovery will happen using log records? Okay, recovery using log records. If the system crashes, we can recover to a consistent database state by examining the log. Okay, so whatever log we are keeping it, these are all things. Okay, so like this we are keeping it for all the transaction. Okay, so this we can recover it by using the log, by using one of the technique described in chapter 19. So after this we'll study that in detail recovery also. Okay, so different kinds of techniques are there, so how we can recover those things. So here just we are saying is how we can do the recovery. So here by seeing the log record we can do the query. So that is nothing but we can see is that operation is committed or not first. Okay, so because of log contains the record of every write operation. Okay, so it contains write operation of all the transactions. Then which all data items also changed in that write item record is there. So for those all things we'll do the undo. If it is a failure, the transaction is a failure, so what we'll do is, so normally we'll do the undo kind of things. And if in that something is a committed one, okay, so then for that transaction we'll do the redo thing. Okay, so it's, whatever write operation is done by the transaction, so those all things will do the redo operation by the forwarding. Okay, so it's a, whenever we will do this one undo, we're doing the backward, backward we are seeing the all the records. So suppose here somewhere it's got the failure, this log record is there for suppose hundreds of transactions, so somewhere it is failed, so one by one we'll go step up, there is a backward we'll see it. Okay, so for the undo purpose, so whatever write items are there, those will do the undo, no need to do for the redo. So redo undo kind of things, nothing will be there. Okay, so for write we'll do the undo things. And after a particular stage, okay, so that is a system is particularly properly it's working, that is nothing but it's a recovery state particularly there. From that we'll start the redo kind of things. So the all the transaction which performed the successfully committed, those all write operations will do the redo things. Okay, so here now next is commit point of transaction. Okay, so here commit point, what we are saying is that the transaction T reaches its commit point when all the operations that access the database have been executed successfully. Okay, and effect of all the transaction operations on the database has to be recorded in the log. Okay, so transaction all the execution is successful happened, and those already recorded in log also. So then we will say that it's reached the commit point. Okay, so beyond the commit point, if the transaction is said to be committed, okay, so, and it's assumed to be permanently recorded in the database. Okay, so that time we'll write in a log as a commit T. Okay, so it's something what we are saying as a here commit, so transaction T is committed. Okay, so that we are saying is, and one more thing is rollback of transaction. So we required something as a rollback. So whatever we studied here is the same thing, a redo kind of what we were saying, this is something about rollback. Okay, so what after transactions needed for the transaction that have the start of this one, start of transaction is entry is there, but commit is not there. Okay, so for those all transactions we have to do the rollback. Okay, so in your log you have start of transaction but you don't have commit of the transaction, so you require the rollback for those things. So we will do the rollback. Okay, so for those operations. Okay, then here we will be having the redoing the transactions. So whichever we have this a rollback, for that we will do the whichever we have the read back, that is a transaction have the right of their commit entry of the in the log must also have the recorded all the right operations in the log, otherwise they would not be committed. Okay, so the effect of the database can be redone from the log entries. So here while rollbacking, maybe some transactions operations will undo it, so again you have to redo it. Okay, so that is something but we are saying as it, so whichever transaction have the committed, okay, so those right operations you have to do it once again. Okay, so and the particular point you have to keep it, there is a system normally will say as it's a consistent state. Okay, so that will keep it in our log record also. Okay, and one more thing we'll be having is nothing but is a force writing a log. Okay, so the before transaction reaches the commit point, always you have to force the system to write the log also, because so whatever operations you have done it, those also has to be recorded. Okay, so before committing all the things, so in your system you have to force to write the log record also. Okay, so this process we will call as a force writing the log file before committing a transaction. Okay. So next is acid property. So that acid property we'll see in next class.